gonna do a walkthrough of one of the grid algos that I've set up on GoodCrypto. My kind of first attempt at recording such a video. If that goes well and it will be something of interest to you, it'll generate some interesting discussions. So I'm gonna make those videos regularly, maybe not only on algos, but also on other features of GoodCrypto. So anyways, let's look at the grid algo in question. So that's an algo running on OKX Futures. The instrument is AXS USDT. Okay, sorry for that. So it's ran on AXS USDT futures. And it was set up now actually 18 hours ago. And long story short, in those 18 hours, it made as of now 43.90, around 44%. So basically, it wasn't done for simplicity, but you can look at the total P&L. I'll explain later why. But so basically, this number, that's a P&L in USDT of this algo, but it also represents roughly the percentage points of the P&L, because as I'll explain in a moment, my total funds locked in this algo are around 100 USDT. So basically, if you see that if I made $43 on $100 investment, or $100 use the collateral here, then basically that represents the same percentage of profit. So basically, it's a grid. It was set up to run at 20 levels, 50 contracts each, and those 50 contracts roughly represent for this instrument on OKX around $100 each. So in total, you can see here that, not here. Let me open the details. You see that the total invested, that means the total locked amount is this grid. So that the sum of all orders open on the grid, they represent roughly $2,021. And given that I use the leverage of 20x, that's not something that you actually see on the screen, but probably there's something for us to add here. So just take me at my word. I've used the leverage of 20x. That means that I've invested or locked as a collateral to this for this algo around 100 USDT. So going one step back, it's made so far $43 on those $100 invested. You can see that's around 43%. So how did I get here? Why I decide first? Let's go over my thinking about the instruments. So to myself, I divide all the instruments that can potentially be used for grid algos into three buckets roughly. One is the pairs of not to USD or USD based stable coins, but traded against altcoins or BTC. So pairs like ETH BTC or BNB BTC or BNB ETH or what have you. So something that is not traded to dollar. That's one bucket. They're less risky, I would say, for grid algos. That I will do a separate video probably on them. They have less volatility, less risk. So that's kind of for safer, lower risk, lower expected return grids, which can be run for a long time. So that's not something we're looking at here. Then another bucket in my mental buckets, I put there two instruments, that's USDT and BTC USDT, or the derivative instruments done for that. So basically, those things I roughly, it's not that I can predict, where the price will go, but at least I have a good feeling of their current volatility or volatility of those instruments expected in the near future, and I can make some short-term judgments on best way to set up the grid. So, but that's something I would say like those run-of-the-mill instruments. So I measure all the other grids that I set up in relation to how they perform relative to BTC and ETH versus USDT. And then there is the third bucket, which AXS USDT would be a part of. Those are I would say more risky, more volatile pairs. So usually I'm looking for uh, an instrument which is or an asset or a coin, right, whatever you want to call it, that is I would say is generating a lot of interest of the community, a lot of hype or popularity or a lot of PR, for good or bad. That's not the point here. It's just there is a lot of interest to that coin, and it's kind of usually those coins are something that was listed quite recently, and it generated a lot of buzz, a lot of PR. So example of that would be GMT, which was, we're now at, end of May of 2022. So GMT, that's something that was listed recently and is generating a lot of buzz, and then hence a lot of volatility. Then there are things like Ape, for example, right? That would be another example. That AXS still, I mean, it was a very, very loud coin, so to say, some time ago, but still it generates a lot of buzz. So those instruments usually generate, while they generate a lot of interest, then they generate a lot of volatility. If that volatility happens to be in some kind of a channel, that looks like an ideal setup for grid, and that's exactly what we are looking here. Sorry for the long introduction. So basically, what we are looking at. So I've checked here in prices, what was going on with actually see for the last day. It's like that's my process, right? So that's my first step I do here. I know that's kind of global average prices and that's moved down, and volume and time weighted and what have you. Anyways, but that's a good measure. So we see that for the last 24 hours it stayed relatively flat. Not bad thing. Okay, maybe let's look at the week. And then I see that for the last week it also was in a relatively tight range. I don't know how tight it is. That will look, look down further down the road. But so now I know two things. It's a bus coin that generates a lot of interest and probably generates a lot of volatility and volume traded, and then it's staying in a tight range or relatively tight range for quite a prolonged time. Probably not in the month, month that's not, but even on a month you can see that for the last week it has been, it has been trading in a range which was probably tightening. But anyway, so still that's a interesting setup for me to do something about it, right? Choosing the initially interesting point, then we go basically to the trade screen and setting up the contract. So what I do first is, I'm basically choosing something like probably 2 hour candles, and okay, I'm not going to stop the grid, but as you can see here, that's the grid I set up, right? Those are the grids that I've chosen, or the grid range that I've chosen. And we will show the grid even on the screen when setting up the grid. We show it, kind of further back, so you can basically eyeball, how grid would have performed in the past, or how your current range, relates to the range that was that the price of this instrument had previously. So that was the moment in time when I was setting up this grid, right? So there I was 18 hours ago, and basically once I've chosen that grid, I think we have some kind of a default. Default settings, usually it's around 1%. The upper and the lower um, grid levels are set at their, I think, 1% above and below market price. And I'm not even sure whether, no, I probably have changed it a bit, but it's around that time. So I just looked at, okay, so if that's, each candle represents 2 hours, so for at least a couple of days, this grid stayed within this range, or at least went up and down, but through that range, which gave me, the first quick idea that might be a good range. The range actually was more, higher and lower, but I don't want to overextend myself, right? So setting up the grid, too broad, that there is a there is a number of pros and cons, but you want to your grid probably you want to be broad, but not too broad because it will require either more levels, so more risk, or looser grid. That means less trades per minute or per hour. So anyway, so that's I look and said maybe that's not a bad thing. So it's more or less covers maybe 80 to 70% of their at least a couple of days of the range in which there's instrument traded for at least a couple of days back, right? So that I thought that's my kind of first thing that I check. And then the second thing that I do is I check, okay, that's kind of an overview, and then I dive really deep into things like 15-second candles to see whether the price, is fluctuating often enough for me to generate a meaningful amount of trades per given amount of time per minute or per second. So you can see, it's the grid that I initially set up is not too tight. It's so if you see, it's like it's not that every 15 seconds candle several trades happen. No, but when the volatility picks up, it probably trades happen once per minute, more or less, and that's not bad. That's for me at least. It is kind of the sweet spot I'm looking at, right? So set the grid too tight, it will probably trade more, but then the P&L, of each trade will be less. So then set it too loose, then it's not gonna trade too much, and then you probably won't be able to generate enough P&L before the grid leaves your range. And so I'm looking for some kind of sweet spot. And for this instrument, I play around maybe with a number of grids. So at that time, I kept their upper and the lower bounds intact, and I kind of here changed the number of grids to choose maybe 10 grids, maybe 20 grids, maybe 30. And so again, I saw that the 20 grids was kind of a sweet spot, and then basically I launched it, right? Once and as I've said, as I've chosen the 20x leverage, that means that I only put $100 in here. I didn't set up the stops for the grid, which is not usually what you want to do, especially on derivative instruments. However, the reason for that is that I have this special account, at least for this grid, and those $100 that are locked into this grid are the only funds there. So and that's something I'm kind of willing to risk. So it's kind of, we could think of it, it's a cross margin, but in a way it's a layered margin. So the most I risk is those $100. Anyways, so that's the grid that I launched. And when I was starting actually the video, the P&L was a bit higher. As you can see, the realized P&L, of course, went even higher, right? So it was around 40 or $43. Now it's 45. But as the price went down and the grid left my range, then realized P&L starts piling up, decreasing my total P&L. That's not something what you want to do. The only reason I did not stop my grid, when the P&L was higher, was that I wanted to record that video for you guys. So I hope you appreciate that. Me, losing the P&L, by second here, looking at the screen. It might come back, it might not, but anyways, that was done mostly for their educational purposes, not for profit making. It's just something I wanted to show you and to illustrate how my thinking around it goes. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say about this particular grid. If that is something that was interesting to you, please comment below or come to our Telegram group. We have a public Telegram group, and we have a semi-closed Telegram group, which is reachable from inside the app. If you go open our GoodCrypto app and you go to settings and hit the Telegram chat, you will be taken to their what we call early adopters chat there, where the actual users, or only the actual users of the app are, and you can I'm there most of the time, and you can hit me directly and ask whatever you want to do, whatever you want to ask, whatever you want to know about this particular grid or any other strategies. If that's something that was interesting to you, do let me know, and that will give me the kind of the energy and the idea to make additional videos, and maybe next time we'll look at the logic and setting up the grid for another, one of my mental buckets, for example, for BTC grids. I have several of those running for quite a long time. I will show you, pros and cons, or the thinking around those type of grids, and maybe also we'll go around one of the BTC USD grids. And then again, maybe after that, I will do a walkthrough of the actual setting up the grid and all the settings, and or the types of grids that you want to use when you have an idea about the direction of the market. So this particular grid, I did not have a idea of where the market would go. I rather hope that it would stay in range. Uh, that's the reason why I set up the grid, just with the uh, market price at the time. It's a neutral position that denotes basically where the market price was when I started the grid, with the market price, in between. So there were sell orders above it and the buy orders below it. So I kind of hoped or projected that at least for the foreseeable future, the grid would stay in this range, and that's where I will make money if it stays in the range, and I will lose money if it goes out of the range. But there are other ways to set up the grid, especially if you have, a directional belief. You expect that the market in the uh, you know near future can will move or should move or would rather move up or down. Grid still can be used profitably in those type of situations, but that's something that I will probably discuss in one of the following videos. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it.